Try to share my screen here. Everybody see that?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep.
Cool. Okay, all good news. Good news that happened in 2020 is continuing into 2021. One of the most important decisions that we've made on behalf of the pension plan since inception has been to lean more towards equities. If you look at the graph down here on the bottom right-hand side, we're using roughly a 70% equity, 30% fixed income. We did that since, we were hired as a fiduciary investment manager, and that's one of the most important decisions we've made on behalf of the pension. Again, this is a little more aggressive than what you see in most municipal pension plans, but in order to try to hit the assumed interest rate over time, we felt it was necessary. So far in the first quarter, we've been up roughly about 3.68%. I sent this out ahead of time for the quarter, but I also want to go through where we are year to date since we're a little bit later in the year. 3.68% so far is about 1.5% above the total benchmark. This came from two different reasons. First reason, rebalancing continues to pay off. So last year, in early April, when the stock market was down about 35%, we sold bonds and bought stocks and continued to do that through 2020. In 2021, rebalancing has helped because we sold large cap growth, which had a 40% return last year. Large cap value was up only about 4%. So as you guys know, we're always investment guru shoppers. So we sold growth high, bought value low. And right now, year to date, value's up 16% and growth is only up roughly 4%. So you bought value at a significant discount at the end of 2020. So what's happened there is it's led to better than benchmark performance when 75% of your pensions don't meet the benchmark. We also have made strategic asset allocation moves throughout the years. We're not just a benchmark index low cost provider, but we're also making strategic moves along the way. One of them being last year, we bought high yield bonds on April 8th and made about 18% on that one strategic decision on the bond side, which led to performance last year. This year, our concern was interest rates and inflation more spawned on by supply, lack of supply, than really inflation. So what I did, and I'm going to go to year to date just so you can see it. So year to date, the pension plan, believe it or not, is up about 6.08% year to date. Last year, up 15.45%. Since inception, up 9%. What I did at the beginning of the year is I lowered the maturity of the bond allocation, thinking that interest rates would rise. That's been a significant positive impact. So where the bond market is down about 3%, you guys are about 1.5% less than that downturn in the bond market because of that strategic decision we made. On the equity side, you're up about 10% versus 8% on the total stock market. Based on two things, we rebalanced and bought value very, very cheap. And we overweighted small and mid cap stocks, which had a tremendous bounce back. So like I said, it's all been extremely positive, good news. The other thing that you're seeing recently in the paper, we've seen how some have struggled, mainly the state pension plan, SERS and PSERS. In those articles, folks have recommended that the state use the same process that you guys had the prudence to adopt over a decade ago. Not only that, but across the country, most pension plans would trade with the township based on performance. So the process continues to work. I don't know another efficient way to do it. And as you can see, since inception, well above the assumed interest rate. So we're going to continue to monitor it. We are set up to rebalance. We've seen some significant moves back and forth. What we see going forward is the market coming back to fair value. We don't see a huge pop, pandemic subsiding. We more see the stock market getting back to fair value. And we're normally right in the middle of the road when it comes to projections and forecasts. Normally, you'll see Vanguard's a little pessimistic, JP Morgan and BlackRock are a little more aggressive. We're usually right in the middle, and we've been pretty good at forecasting where we expect things to go. So with the remainder of 2021, up 6% so far, about 1.5% above the blended benchmark. We're thrilled, and we're going to continue to rebalance and do the things that we've done since inception. So with that, I'll open up to any questions or. And Jeff, were you going to say something?
I just asked if anybody had any questions for you. All right, if there's no questions. Dave?
Sure. Good morning, everyone. Kevin Stanton and I are on the call today. No reports available to present yet. Kevin's going to kind of take us through where we are year to date. But as we discussed, I think early in the year, this is an odd calendar year, so there will be a valuation performed which sets forth contribution requirements for the following 2 calendar years, 2022 and 2023. We're working on that now. The township's report for GASB purposes will be issued next week. We had some discussions with the finance director and with the chief administrative officer about some assumptions. So we'll be wrapping that up and issuing that so they can record it appropriately in the financials. So Kevin, do you want to take everyone through kind of what we've done and where we're headed into the rest of the year?
Sure. So we prepared the benefit statements for the officers back in April and sent those to the township. I assume by now they've been distributed. And I don't think there were any questions, at least we didn't hear anything, but of course, if anybody has any, any officers have any questions on their benefit statements, you can of course reach out to us and we can, make any updates or field any questions you guys have. As Dave mentioned, the GASB report, which details the pension plans accounting numbers for the township, we will finalize that next week. And then after that, we will work on the funding report. Because this is an odd calendar year, as Dave mentioned, we will get that done probably end of June, July timeframe, I would say. So maybe by our next quarterly meeting, might have that ready, and we can go over those results. And following that, shortly thereafter, we will use that report to prepare the 2022 MMO calculation. And then that really gets us through pretty much the end of the year at that point, once we have the MMO done. So are there any questions or anything anyone wants to go over regarding the actuarial calendar?
Nope.
So moving on, authorization of the following. Payment to CBIZ INR for actuarial services for October 1st through December 31st, the amount of $4,000. Payment to CBIZ for 2021 actual valuation, GASB 68, information for AG 385, filing, pension calculations in the amount of $11,800. Our pension board solicitor, Cozen O'Connor, attorney Rob Kaplan, for professional services attorney fees through March 31st, 2021, for the amount of $5,670. Sir Speedy for a box of envelopes with police pension letterhead in the amount of $140. 21st Century Media for public notice advertisement for rescheduling a meeting for second quarter in the amount of $61.15. And payment to Pension Board Secretary Kara M. Gavin for secretarial services for the second quarter of 2021 at $350 for the quarter. All in favor, say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Acknowledgements. The retirement of Captain Michael J. Curley, effective April 23rd. The resignation of Officer Anthony Capodanno, effective February 28th. He will be refunded his contributions with interest. And the passing of retired Officer Romeo Durazio, January 31st, and retired Officer David Maslow, March 24th. So, and we have for discussion, Officer Jonathan Rosinski applying for non-service connected disability. I'll turn this over to the CAO for comment.
Yeah, I believe in consultation with our labor attorneys that Officer Rosinski is qualified for the non-service connected disability, and he did put in for it. So I think, yeah, I think he's entitled to it.
Is that something you wanted to do today?
Honestly, I would prefer to get firm confirmation from the labor attorneys. I believe that's their opinion and their recommendation for the pension board, but I'd like to be able to provide the trustees with something in writing from the attorneys before you take a vote. That would be my recommation.
Okay. So
Jeff,
wait.
can I ask a question about that? Since I think this is the first one since I've been a trustee, can somebody just explain what the process is when somebody applies for? Actually, but I have a question about both service and non-service connected. Like, what happens before it gets to the trustees?
Vincent?
Yeah, honestly, in this instance, the only the only process that I'm aware of is he submitted a letter requesting the non-service connected pension, and he's been through independent medical exam to verify the injuries. So the lawyers have evaluated an IME along with a letter, from him requesting the benefit.
From my perspective, the only thing the plan requires, it says any officer can file a written application on a form that you prescribe for a disability, assuming you don't have a pre-written form. I think a letter is fine from the officer. The plan says you have discretion to require your own exam by your own physician if you didn't want to take the IME, although you're not obligated to do that.
Okay.
And then the only other thing in the plan is for non-service connected disabilities. There's an offset for any workers' comp money that he's entitled to. But if it's non-service related, there probably is not a workers' comp component to it.
Okay. I mean, maybe it would be a good idea to do a quick call between you, Rob, and the labor attorneys sort of offline, and that way at the next meeting, we'll have all our ducks in a row to advise the trustees on the process and with a recommendation. How does that sound? Okay.
Yeah.
I just had two questions also. Has he been reinstated yet, Vince?
No, that's sort of part of the procedure here. He sort of put in for the non-service connected very quick proximity to his separation. Yeah, so no, but it probably is a formality that needs to take place before we can pay it out. Yeah.
And I guess the next question Rob might be able to answer. So when you're non-service connected, is there a cap that you can legally make as income?
No, so the way the plan is worded is that a non-service connected disability is one that makes him permanently unable or unfit to perform the duties of an officer for the township.
Right.
So it's actually a similar definition to the service connected disability.
Right.
And then the only difference is there's a lower benefit, which is a 50%
Right,
of the
right.
final salary rather than 70%, but there's no cap legally on outside income if that's what you're
Okay. Because I think that's maybe discussion for a later time, but that's starting to become some of the questions that Jeff and I are getting is, okay, well, guys are going out on disability and then they're going and getting another 6-figure job. You know, how disabled are they?
Yeah, so that's possible that could be up for discussion to change the plan for non-service connected disabilities. The service connected disabilities are statutory. So you wouldn't necessarily be able to change it for service connected disabilities.
Okay, so they don't have to provide at the end of the year a W-2 for a second employment where they're collecting another
No,
6-figure,
For
job.
both disabilities, it's not about a second
Income.
job. It's just whether they're able or fit to be an officer for the township.
Okay.
And just like if they hit the Powerball, you wouldn't suddenly turn off their pension. It's almost the same thing.
Well, I would try.
Understood.
All right.
So Rob, just to be clear, there's no issue with the disability if they could do any other kind of job and still be eligible for the disability pension as long as they can't do law enforcement, right? So if they could do a law enforcement job, then they would no longer be eligible.
Correct.
Okay.
Now, in terms of changing the plan, that provision is statutory for service-connected disabilities. It is not statutory for non-service connected disabilities. Although it would theoretically be bargainable, but you'd have to talk to the labor attorney about that.
And just along those lines on that question that Tommy raised, could we, if we wanted to, put in some sort of an income offset within the plan if people do have other jobs? Like if somebody does go get a 6-figure job, could we put in an income offset with a reporting requirement if we wanted to?
I will double check that. My thinking, and I haven't looked at this specifically, my initial reaction is that you could for non-service connected disabilities, but not for service connected. And the reason is service connected disabilities have a statutory minimum to them. There is no non-service connected disability requirement under the statute, right? So you could theoretically put in a limit. That would only apply to disabilities going forward. It wouldn't be retroactive.
Could you increase basically the definition of disability for non-service connected to be like permanent total, qualify for Social Security disability in order to get that pension?
I'll look at that, but I don't see why not, because it's not
Right.
statutory. Yeah, so you could also change the definition. All of those may be bargainable though, right? So you'd have to work with the union on it.
For sure.
Right, but you could put a cap, you could eliminate non-service connected disabilities entirely. You could change the definition to make it a broader definition. All of those for non-service connected are theoretically possible.
I don't think there have been many in this plan. Most of them are service connected.
Yeah, I agree with Dave. Yeah, they're few and far between.
Yeah.
Usually there's some catastrophic illness or injury. But it's very clear usually.
Yeah, I think the danger is we don't want, and I mean, not to say anything about this case in particular, but I think it's good. Good might be the wrong word. I think it's probably appropriate that most of them are service connected. What we don't want is somebody blazing a trail and leaving breadcrumbs in the wrong direction, if you know what I mean.
Yes. So for discussion also is Raymond Bloom, retired detective, service connected, returned to work from service connected disability. I would like to start on that.
So I can start if you want. So
Yeah, great.
in looking into that, I spoke to a few people regarding the position that he had taken with the Attorney General's office. Since that, we've come to.
Just describe the position for everyone.
It was a sworn law enforcement position with the Attorney General's office that would have arrest powers, the same powers that a police officer would have. It would include investigations, carrying a firearm, search warrants, pretty much the same job he was doing when he left here on a service-connected disability. He did complete a physical, but from what I understand, not a physical fitness test up until that point.
A medical exam, more or less?
Yes.
Okay.
So, which whoever that doctor was deemed them able to do the sworn position. I guess, some wind got to him, and we've been told since then that he has decided not to move forward with that position. It's my belief that it was not a resignation because he had not yet been sworn in, that he was attending their version of their academy or their training. So that's kind of where it's at.
Yeah, his attorney, Joe Shupin, relayed to me that prior to anything physical in the academy for new investigators, he realized that there's more than he realized he could handle, and that he resigned from the process prior to completing it and prior to being sworn as a special agent.
I guess my question here is for Rob, because I'm a little uncomfortable with his attorney addressing people who are not the pension board's attorney or the township's attorney. His attorney should know better than to contact a represented party directly. So, I mean, as trustees, you have representation. Rob is your solicitor. He's your representative. And so my understanding is that counsel is supposed to talk to counsel. So I guess, I don't know if you can make that into a question, Rob.
It happens. I'm not opposed to taking on all questions, right? Like, but it happens differently for different boards of trustees. If you didn't want folks addressing you, you could always suggest that you contact me directly, and I can always handle it. Yeah, I mean, from a plan perspective, I think all of this is things for you to consider. The plan outlines that the trustees can require anyone on a disability to submit for an independent medical exam once every 6 months, right? So if you think there's a question about his disability, you could certainly ask him to submit for a medical exam, assuming he hasn't had one from the township in the last 6 months.
And Rob, that's just, we could do it routinely if we wanted to.
Yes. and many plans do it routinely. That you could be on a schedule every 6 months, or most plans that I work with have folks on a rotating like 2 or 3 year schedule. Except for the folks that they absolutely know had some debilitating disability.
Well, my belief is that we should implement a schedule. I mean, not every 6 months, because that would be, I think, probably prohibitively expensive. And also just, that would be a lot for people to have to go through a medical exam. But anybody, unless there was some, we know that the injury was something, really catastrophic, like a traumatic brain injury, that there is no question, or somebody was, left paralyzed or something where there's really no question. I think we should just start doing, periodic on a regular schedule of medical exams to, protect the plan, because we do know that a significant portion of the expenses that are being paid out of the plan are to people who are on disability. Obviously, we want everybody who has suffered a service-connected injury to get the if they're disabled, they should get the benefit, but sometimes things change over time, and it is a rich benefit. I think we need to protect the assets of the plan for all of the officers who are currently working and future officers, by making sure that, people aren't getting this service-connected disability benefit if in fact they could be working as an officer.
Yeah, and me and Jeff kind of ran into, I guess what we're trying to figure out is if that officer is then deemed able to perform them duties again, what happens? There's really nothing in writing that says he's going to come back to work. What's in writing is that his pension goes back in, it stops until his superannuation date. Or they don't have an option to come back to work, or how does that? That's another open.
I believe that would be an issue for the labor contract, not for the pension board, right? I mean, that's not a plan question. I believe that's a labor question of what does the CBA, what are his rights under the CBA, and something that, the union and the township would be better addressing in bargaining than, I think, a question for the trustees.
Yep, agreed. Some pension plans do have a provision that says if the trustees turn off a disability benefit, that the township must rehire them. Your plan does not have that provision, and I agree with Shannon that that's something that should be addressed from a labor perspective, not from a pension perspective.
So moving forward, what's our plan of action?
So Jeff, do you want a motion on this? I mean, I think we should be getting a medical examination of this officer, because we do have reason to question. And then I think, I'm not in any way looking to punish this officer. I think that we should just we should be starting a program of just requiring exams periodically. We could, start on some sort of a rotation, but I think that's what we should do it. And I think if, what might make sense, and Rob, correct me if you disagree, is that we do a resolution to do that. And then the details of how to implement that, I think probably Jeff, you and Vince can work out, because the township's going to have to get, I think we could probably, typically what people do in my experience is you get a list of doctors from your insurance carrier that does the workers' compensation, even though it's not through that and the township would be paying for it separately. It's just, there are a list of doctors who do this stuff, like who do the IMEs basically. And then, give people notice, or sometimes either you tell them what doctor to go to, or you give them a list of people they can go see and a deadline to do it, would be my suggestion. But the details of that to be handled basically by the township, or, Jeff, you can coordinate with the township on that. But I think we probably want to do, if we're going to start this, we probably want a resolution that we're going to implement this. Rob, do you agree?
Yeah, I think that makes sense. You could do it either way. I can put together a resolution. You could vote on it and reflect it in the minutes, or have a written resolution. Either one is fine.
Okay. The resolution sounds like the best, in my opinion, best way to move forward.
I'll put together a resolution and send it around.
Okay.
Okay,
And
so
is that? I'm sorry. Go ahead. Sorry.
I was just going to say, so for purposes of this meeting, Because obviously if we do that, a resolution wouldn't happen probably until our next meeting. Do we want to at least address the situation with this officer, or do we want to have that wait until we do just a general resolution? Because we could also, I think, just say, we're requesting an IME on this, where, want to request an IME on this officer, and then you prepare a resolution to address the going forward, creating a program.
Yeah, I mean, or I could next week send out a written resolution for everyone to sign in lieu of a meeting, if that's your preference.
Okay.
And that would get you moving for next week. Either way, though.
The
Yeah, I think
bill
whatever
for the
gets us moving.
doctor. Those
I'm sorry?
doctors, so if we send for an IME, okay, and it's X amount of dollars, is that paid by the pension plan
Yes,
or the town? So it's paid by the plan.
the plan.
Okay. Because I guess, I'm gonna be a straight shooter here. I'm not concerned about doing it twice a year where, if somebody feels inconvenienced, if you're out on a service connected disability, you're making pretty good money. So, if it's every 6 months or once a year, I'm not concerned so much as, somebody having to go out of their way when they're probably making it, they're doing well enough to where 2 times a year isn't out of the question.
Most plans have a rotating schedule of every 2, 3, or 4 years, and they do it in a manner that everyone's rotating, so everyone doesn't do it in the same year. And going forward, you would just do it pick a year, like on their 3rd year anniversary, and then that way the trustees wouldn't have to review them.
Gotcha. Good. Thank you, Rob.
Yeah. Do you have a ballpark of how many folks are on disability under the plan?
How much time do you have?
Dave, do you have a number of the number of people on service connected disability? I would think Dave probably knows.
43, Dave? 43.
Right.
Now, keep in mind, of
I will
them
look real
43,
quick while you guys are discussing.
of them 43, a lot of them are past their actual retirement date. So Dave would know, might be 20 that are still before the retirement date.
And there's probably a handful of catastrophic events where you wouldn't necessarily need to do a
Right.
evaluation, right?
Like we've got 46 total disability recipients as of January of 21. And again,
And
I
how
can't
many
even-
paying pensions? 104?
I can't even remember the last non-service connected. I think most of these end up being service connected disability. I'm sorry, Tom, what was that question?
But we have 104, 105 out on a pension currently, paid pension, and 46 of them are disability pensions, or 44 of them. So we're almost 50%. 50% of the people being paid on a pension are on a disability pension.
Yeah, about 40% of the folks in receipt of a benefit
Yeah.
are disability. Now you've got some
That's survival.
beneficiaries out there too.
Right.
It's really high.
So the question, so Tommy, you raised a question. So you said a number of the people who are out on the service connected disability pensions are now at the point where they'd be receiving a regular pension and in a regular age-based pension, right? What's the difference, roughly what's the difference in the benefit for those? It obviously depends on years of service, but what, like at the let's say somebody had worked sort of a long career, what's the difference in the benefit? I just don't remember off the top of my head.
Between
the service connected and a service, yeah.
So a regular pension versus a service connected? Right, so some guys here were, and we don't have a lot of them left, but they were 62%. And then guys that after that are 50%. If you go out on a service connected disability, it's 70% tax free. And
the-
if you look at the numbers, you'll see that a large portion of them are people with maybe 10 years of service or less. So the fact that not paying into it long and then getting paid off of that for another 40 years versus a guy that stays his 25 years. And,
So it's a significant difference to the plan, even for the people who've reached superannuation.
Yeah,
It could
'cause-
still be a significant
the
difference.
numbers will
plan.
tell you, and I think Dave would agree. I mean, the chances of, let's say, I'll be here till I'm 60, Lord willing. I will probably, based on the numbers, only survive another 5 to 10 years to be able to spend that pension. Whereas to somebody that goes out at 35, 40 years old is going to collect a longer term than I will. And that seems to be the concern, obviously, is, you do the math, Shannon, and you say, okay, well, why would I stay? There's a 70% benefit versus
Tax break.
Tom is going to stick around for 50%. Well, he's a dope.
I should mention your plan has a 70% disability benefit for service connected.
Yeah.
The statutorily, the floor is a 50% benefit, right? So subject to bargaining, you could theoretically lower that to 50 with an offset for if the person's receiving Social Security disability.
Because I'm of the belief that 70% is state mandated.
I'll double check it. I think it's 50. Dave is shaking his head, so I think you're in agreement. We can't hear you, Dave. Your lips are moving, but we still can't hear you.
How about now?
Yep.
Yeah, you know.
That's weird. I didn't think I was on mute. Act 600 will lay that out for you. If I can forward over that language,
Yeah.
just so that everybody can see it. But I believe the Act 600 minimum starts at 50%.
That's what I had thought too. I thought it was 50 also.
Yeah, honestly, this is a little bit off topic, but just because of this conversation and some of the other conversations we've had, it might be a good idea for us to kind of schedule a pension board retreat or something where we talk about what possible changes to the pension plan we want to make and what changes to the plan would be bargainable that we might want to recommend to the labor attorneys. Because we do seem to get into these conversations where it's like, oh, this is something that you could consider changing in the plan. Might be a nice idea to have that conversation in a sort of consolidated way and do like one update rather than piecemeal updates kind of thing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's long
Yeah.
overdue.
Along the same lines, the plan hasn't been updated for law changes in quite some time. So it's worth, even if you make no changes, I don't think it's pressing, but even if you made no changes, it's worth a rewrite to update it.
Probably not since 1906.
Okay. So we're moving on from that topic for now?
Just to be clear, I'm going to pass around a unanimous consent in lieu of a meeting this week to the trustees, which will appoint Jeff and Vince to give them authority to create a policy for requiring medical exams for disability.
Okay.
Okay.
So under old business, we have the Quadro for Andrew Morris. Does it do anything for that?
So I reviewed this quadro and recommended it be implemented and drafted a letter to the folks who had requested the quadro that it had been implemented.
Okay.
I think my only question, you guys may have this under control, right? But does someone have a stack of quadros that when an officer does retire, you know that you can't pay out their full benefit and that some of it belongs to their former spouse?
Karen, can you speak us to that?
Meaning someone has to be smart enough to know 10 or 15 years from now when the person retires that there is a separate benefit for the officer.
Yes.
Okay.
Do we have to take any action, Rob, for that today?
I've had other clients put in on the pension application, to the extent that there is one, where the participant will declare their marital status and indicate whether whether they've been divorced and whether there's a quadro, and they have to, kind of sign off on that. It might be smart.
So here rises another question then, Dave. Let's say an officer goes out on service-connected disability. What happens to that tax-free pension? Is the spouse entitled to half of a tax-free pension?
Certainly
gets a
not
little
tax.
goofy.
Certainly not tax advice, but that person is not disabled. I would not think that is entitled to tax favorability the way that it is for the disabled person.
Yeah, I don't know that offhand, but I think that's right.
If it can happen, it'll happen here. We'll figure it out. Things always seem to happen here.
And I don't know that it's up to this group's responsibility to give that surviving spouse that information. They really need to consult with a tax advisor. However, I would say it'll be important to figure that out because, as you know, Mike's team is making pension payments and withholding tax. Although I guess there is no requirement to hold tax, that participant will have to file the tax return and deal with the consequences of any over or under withholding on their
Or you
own.
have to figure out how to report the 1099-R.
Yeah.
I don't mind checking. My suggestion is if it ever comes up, we can check at that point. Do you want to reflect in the minutes that the quadro has been approved?
Yes.
Do we need a motion? Rob,
Sure, yes.
we do, yes. Motion to approve the discussed quadro. Have a motion, a second.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, ayes have it. Okay. New business, nothing listed. Anybody can think of any new business? Okay. Now we step forward with new business. Suggest we adjourn the meeting. The only other thing that was on there, 1 second, was
The next meeting is
Next
July
meeting.
16th.
there you go. Thank you, Karen. Next meeting is scheduled for July 16th. In person or virtual, should we visit that at that time, you think, Vince? Or
I think we should probably follow the township and the school district's lead and just stay virtual through September and revisit it at that point.
okay. So it'll be virtual for July 16th.
Got it.
I'll motion to
Actually, and
Yeah.
I'm going to raise an issue. I think that probably belongs in new business.
Yeah.
So I having been on the board now for what, 18 months, something, maybe a little bit less than that, a year or so. It's my understanding that we have not typically engaged in any type of RFPs or competitive bidding for the services of our actuary and investment advisor. And as a matter of best practice, I recommend that we do so. My suggestion would be that we do an RFP or advertise. Rob can give me the exact language on what we want to do on that in terms of an investment advisor. And I think, while I think we should do so for the actuary, I think we should do one at a time because of the timing of the actuarial evaluation report. I'm not sure that the actuary makes sense at this moment. But so I would like to make a motion that we, and Rob will give us the exact language, advertise for bids for an investment advisor. Make sure that we're being competitive.
Okay. You asked for a motion?
Yes.
Okay.
I mean, Rob, if you want to, Rob, do you want to give me better wording?
I think that's right there. I think it's just a motion to advertise bids for an investment advisor for the plan.
Okay, Shannon's making a motion to do that?
Yes.
Okay, so second,
Second.
all those in favor say aye.
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 Aye, ayes have it.
So we'll direct Rob to prepare the language for Cara to send out.
Correct.
I'll put something together when I send out the resolution of the trustees for the disability issue.
Okay.
Both will go out early next week.
Any other business? Okay with adjourning the meeting? Okay, motion to adjourn the meeting.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
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 Ayes have it. Meeting's adjourned.
All right, thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
Yeah.